if you're not willing to put yourself on the cross to save another, then why are you here? And
Right.
as a Catholic and as a Christian, if you're not uncomfortable if you're not uncomfortable, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if every day is happy and peaches and cream, then you obviously haven't engaged somebody in what you believe.
Yeah. When did you learn that though, about that seeking comfort is problematic to the spiritual life, or is antithetical in a lot of ways?
I can tell you the exact day. It was April 19th, 2018 was the day that I figured God just kind of made his presence completely known in a way. There were many times, but that's how he taught me that you don't have anything, that you don't own anything, that everything that you have is a gift from him. And that when you leave, he doesn't even want your body. Like he's just taking.
That's really profound.
He's just taking your soul, and then eventually, someday, he's going to give you back the good body. But he wants nothing. And see, what happened was I had somebody who I loved dearly. That in the middle of the night, and for some unknown reason, I had my computer on just like I have with you right now, which was weird because usually at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, I'm not on my computer. And it rang. And I was like, what is ringing? And my phone rang and my computer rang. And I answered it. I answered the call, some video call that came in on my computer. And it was somebody that I love very, very much. And they had a shotgun in their hand.
Fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Arf, hounds of heaven. Jesus loves you and is there for you. Welcome into the David L. Gray Show, off code and unscripted, where I'm discussing things, the important things, without a filter and without a teleprompter. Got one thing for you today, the show. A continuation of my conversation with our friends about what is that one thing in their life, that one event or several events that changed everything for them. And we're about to get into that right now with Ellen Holmes Steeves-LeBlanc. Right now. Originally from Massachusetts, and for the past 20 years residing in Eastern North Carolina, Ellen Holmes Steeves-LeBlanc is a cradle Catholic, a mother of 3 grown children, and now can be seen weekly on her weekly podcast called The Prodigal Life with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, who's been on this show a few times, and also Nick De La Torre. She's been developing with Deacon Harold something called the Contemplative Pilgrimage Ministry, that is CPM for short, that enables pilgrims to still see the holy sites of the world, but in a slower, much more deliberate way that allows for a deeper pilgrimage experience. She's also just solidified a nonprofit called Destined for This, Inc., which is a charity rooted in prayer and prophecy. With approval of her spiritual director, Father Joseph Esper, she's been developing a website to share her mystical journey. So that's a lot there that we're going to get into. But the most important thing is that now she's on the David L. Gray Show. Welcome in, Ellen.
Hello, David. How are you today?
Doing well. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
So before we get into everything, tell us, how can we find you? Because you have a lot going on. You got the tours, you got the mystical spirit. You're doing a lot. Where can people find you? I want to let them know that just from the beginning of the show.
It's very easy to find me. My website is being finalized. Eventually, it'll be destined for this. destinedforthis.com, and then there'll be destinedfortruth.com. But right now you can go to theprodigallife.com, and that's where all of the podcasts are. It's also on Spotify, Apple, on the Awaken app, which you can get very easily at Awaken Catholic, the Awaken app, theawakenapp.io. It's also on YouTube and Facebook. Then you can go to Select International Tours, which is where I host pilgrimages. I also work with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers and getting his pilgrimages coordinated. I do some of my own, and I work with a lot of different priests. I just did one with Father Chris Alar from the Divine Mercy Shrine. We just got back from Lourdes, and then I did one in May with Father Brennan from St. Norbert's College up in Green Bay. And then we have another one going with a priest from the Diocese of Phoenix, Father McNair, to Guadalupe in December. So, there's a lot going on, and we're working on more. The contemplative pilgrimages should kick off next year. So you can go to selectinternationaltours.com, and you can go to theprodigallife.com. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook, and I have a public profile. So it makes it, pretty simple. I don't really hide because, Jesus said that not everybody's going to like me, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, good stuff. So are you going on the tours with your
Pilgrims? Yes. Yeah.
So you're going on the pilgrimages.
Sure do.
Oh,
yeah, I'm a group leader. I kind of help corral the masses for, It's called chasing squirrels. That's what I call it. But that's just kind of, I'm just kind of being silly. But it just kind of helps build community when you have group leaders. Like Deacon Harold is also a group leader, and so between the two of us, when we do go on pilgrimage together, like right now he's on a pilgrimage in Poland, and he's going to Bromagau, and that's just something that he's done on his own. He does some on his own. We do some together. You know what I mean? We're all working for the same goal. You know what I mean? To try and get people to Christ. You know what I mean?
How's that going since the
pandemic?
Since a lot of countries have shut down,
everything
shut their borders because of the virus. How's that going now?
Open right now, thank God. It took a long time. It was, 2.5 years of pretty restricted stuff. And right now there's finally no restrictions to get back into the country. When I came back from Ireland in May, I had to get an antigen test, and that was the only thing I had to get. And I had to wear a mask flying to Lufthansa. Still have masks. You know what I mean? So it's all individual based on the country and the airline and whatever else. But other than that, it's been pretty uneventful. France was pretty wide open, which was great. Which was really
a lot of are pilgrims coming back? Is it picking back up?
Oh yeah. There's still a little bit of fear. I mean, the war in Ukraine has, some people a little on edge. And some people are still a little bit nervous with everything going on, but people were really thirsty to travel again. And pilgrimage is such a really rich and deep way to really learn about, your faith, in addition to like seeing things that blow your mind. That, pilgrimage is really, really great. So, and Select International Tours, I don't know if you know this, they're based out of Flemington, New Jersey. And they have been in the pilgrimage business over 35 years. And it's a female run company, and they're really beautiful in what they do. And they try their darndest to, make sure that everything goes well. So I highly recommend them. I've been, on different trips. I've traveled my whole life, and I have been extremely impressed with the quality of hotel, the quality of the tour guides. Mostly it's the tour guides. You can sleep in the worst place in the world, but if you're with somebody who's not teaching you anything, it's torture. You know what I mean? So you get both. You get both with Select. So that's great.
I like Select International. I was starting to work with them before the whole pandemic. They were we're working on getting myself and my senior Eugene Morris out there. And then everything fell apart. But the deacon, my senior Morris and I were talking about it not too long ago. So maybe we'll get back
time
out
to
there.
Go. This is what we know. It's time to go. So before something else crazy happens.
Yeah. But you have speaking of pilgrimages and journeys, your life seems to have been quite a journey itself. I was looking on your site, and I think you had an essay coming out. I was talking about how as well, but it was fascinating to me to read, because looking at you don't look much older than 26, but it says that it took you 50 years.
50 years. I'm 55.
Oh, wow. So, but you're a cradle Catholic.
Great. Oh yeah. I was baptized 5 days after I was born.
Yeah.
True. Yep.
Poorly catechized.
Yes. I was born in 1967. So I was a product of the 70s and the 80s.
Talk about that.
And so I went to Catholic school. I went to CCD. But the only things I knew in my faith were the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and that if the Eucharist was exposed on the altar, you hit two knees. That was pretty much it. I didn't know the act of contrition. We went to we never really went to confession. I never knew how to do the rosary, and I know I'd never read the Bible. The only time I can honestly say the Bible was ever opened in my household was on Christmas Eve when we would read, I think it was Luke, and that was the only time, pretty much in my entire life. And then in 1997, I got invited to a Bible study when I was married to a Marine and we were stationed in California, and I was the only still remaining Catholic in the room. Everybody else is Catholic, but none of them were. They all had gone Protestant or whatever else they were doing, and I was the only one that was still. Even though I wasn't a really good Catholic, I still considered myself a Catholic. And, I did go to church on Easter and Christmas, so that counts, right? And so in 97, I went to this Bible study once, and I have actually notes in my Bible that I took. So like those are my two biblical awarenesses in my entire life. So,
go back to 97 for me. That's interesting. I mean, did you really? Because a lot of people would maybe question their faith at that moment. You're around all these I was raised Catholic people.
I knew I was Catholic. I didn't have any idea really what it meant per se. I just knew that I wasn't ever going to be anything else. And I went to Lutheran Mass, or whatever they call it. And I've been to the Lutherans, the Methodists, the Episcopals. I've been to some spiritual church. I've been to the headbanger churches. I've been. Okay. And sometimes they have great homilies, or sermons, or whatever they're called. Sometimes, man, they are off the charts good. The music's a little loud, but that's okay. But every once in a while, you get a really good message, and God bless them. They know the Bible a heck of a lot better than I ever did. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. It wasn't the right Bible, but at least they, you know what I mean? At least they had what they had, and they read those.
They read what they had.
Yeah.
They're doing the best they can with what they have. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but I had one guy just the other day. He's in Uganda, and that I talk to every once in a while, and they have King James Bibles, and I send him a message and I go, you do realize those are insufficient. And he was like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, we got to get you some real Bibles, with all the stories in it, not the ones that Martin Luther didn't like. That's the one we need to get you. I mean, you can't. The thing that always blew my mind as I learned my faith in my 50s, because that's basically what has happened. What blew my mind was that someone, just in general, I mean, I'm not, we all got to do, and we're all sinners. So, there's no award when you get to heaven, who was the best and the worst sinner. But that this man thought that he could change the words. Mm-hmm. How do you change God's words? Yeah. Where do you, I guess it's different when you totally disregard them, but to change that, to actually acknowledge them and know where they came from. I think he was a monk or something, you know what I mean? And then go, Jesus was wrong or God was wrong. That to me was mind boggling.
It takes a degree of hubris, pride that we're fortunate that most people may not have, right? To say, you know what? I'm a little bit smarter than God on this one.
Yeah. Which, we all do that pretty much daily. It's like, it's going to rain outside. You probably should take your umbrella. You have that little inkling in your head, it ain't going to rain. And then it rains. And you're like, well, God tried. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the guy that's drowning at sea. And he's out there on his little raft. And he's waiting for somebody to come rescue him. And so this boat goes by and they send somebody. He was like, no, I'm waiting. And then a helicopter comes by and he was like, no, I'm waiting for God to save me. And then he dies and he gets to where he's going. And he's like, why didn't you save me, God? And he was like, I sent a boat and a helicopter. So it's just kind of funny. I think it's really funny.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But did you have so you grew up kind of, like you said, kind of poorly catechized. Faith is not really part of the home experience.
It was. I grew up surrounded by pictures of Jesus and statues. We went to Mass on Sundays. But, we said Mass at dinner. I mean, not Mass. We said prayers at dinner.
Yeah.
We never said the rosary together as a family. That we did an episode about that on the Prodigal Life too. We talk about a lot of hard stuff on the Prodigal Life, different topics that are very uncomfortable and most people don't want to talk about are the ones that we talk about. Because, it's all about testimony. If you're not willing to put yourself on the cross to save another, then why are you here? And
Right.
as a Catholic and as a Christian, if you're not uncomfortable if you're not uncomfortable, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
every day is happy and peaches and cream, then you obviously haven't engaged somebody in what you believe.
Yeah. When did you learn that though, about that seeking comfort is problematic to the spiritual life, or is antithetical in a lot of ways?
Um, I can tell you the exact day. It was April 19th, 2018 was the day that I figured God just kind of made his presence completely known in a way. There were many times, but that's how he taught me that you don't have anything, that you don't own anything, that everything that you have is a gift from him. And that when you leave, he doesn't even want your body. Like he's just
Wow,
taking,
that's
he's
really
just,
profound.
he's just taking your soul. And then eventually someday he's going to give you back the good body. But
Yeah.
he wants nothing. And see, what happened was I had somebody who I loved dearly, that in the middle of the night, and for some unknown reason, I have my computer on just like I have with you right now, which was weird because usually at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, I'm not on my computer. And it rang. And I was like, what is ringing? And my phone rang and my computer rang. And I answered it. I answered the call, some video call that came in on my computer. And it was somebody that I love very, very much. And they had a shotgun in their hand and a casing in the other hand. And they called to tell me that they loved me very much and to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember this weird peace, extreme pain, but this weird peace that came over me. And I can remember I literally just went like this and I just bowed my head. And then I talked as long as they would talk, you know what I mean, to me, and tried, what do you tell somebody that's, got a shotgun in their hand, with the bullet, the shell in the other hand, you just try to tell them that you love them, you know what I mean? And you just talk to them. And then the screen went blank. It went black. And I had no idea for like a half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour. And I can remember just putting my head down and realizing 100% that I had nothing, that this was all in God's hands. Like there was I was completely powerless. I was completely helpless. I was completely in the hands of God, because that was the only human being, that was the only person, if you want to call him a person, but the only thing that I had was God. And there was nothing else that was going to had any power to do anything about the situation. And that's pretty much when I realized it was, it's weird. God always does for you what you can't do for yourself. Mm-hmm. And, learning humility, because I was never a humble person in my whole life. And I still struggle sometimes because it's just not in my gene. It's not my gene code. You know what I mean? My mother rang bells and everything was great. And, you get, your parents, God bless them. My parents were wonderful. I grew up in like the Beaver Cleaver house. My parents met when they were 8, dated when they were 16, got married at 22, and were married 50 years. And my mom died 3 months after. Like I grew up in that. Now, I'm not saying their marriage was perfect, but pretty much they held hands when they fought. So whatever. Aww. So and if they got too heated, one would leave and go for a drive or go for a walk, and then they would come back and reconvene. Yeah. But it was always they loved each other, you know what I mean? And they lived that love. So even though I might not have learned to say the rosary and maybe my faith wasn't, something, we didn't talk about religion a ton, and we didn't talk about a bunch of stuff. It was just it was kind of like I told you, we just knew. Yeah. So there was like this knowing, but it wasn't ever force fed to us, which, there are a lot of things I wish had been done differently, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, you know what I mean? Yeah. You can look back, but it didn't work out really well for Lot's wife when she did. So you got to just make decisions, what I mean? If you want to look back a whole lot, it's fine to look back so that you can appreciate what you have now, in the present. But it's not good to look back to live in the turmoil or the unforgiveness or the regret or the, all of that. That's not why you should look back. You should always look back so that you can say, gee, I'm not that person anymore. Or gee, I learned from that. Or, gee, my, look how much things have changed. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was the day. That was the day. There have been a lot of days in this journey. A lot of days. The Lord has been gunning for me ever since I was a very young, small child. But I always pushed him away. You know what I mean? Or just kept him in that safe space, which was the picture on the wall.
Was that like were those like conscious choices that you're making to like not to fall into that sort of commitment, that sort of relationship?
I think so. I don't know at 7 years of age or 15 or 20 or what your capability is to say no, but when your self-will is greater than your willingness to surrender your will to that which created you, you kind of much have made that decision. You might not want to say it as that, but my first spoken sentence, which is written in my baby book, was "do myself."
Yeah. Wow.
So I was very independent. My mother used to joke around and say that at 18 months of age, had I been able to provide for myself, I could have done that.
That's a great quality. That's one of the qualities I like about my second oldest daughter. Sometimes
Very independent.
I feel like I don't have to worry about that one.
Yep.
But every now and then, she'll call me. She may be crying about something. Then I realize, oh, she's still vulnerable. She's still a girl. She still needs dad.
Right.
But she's the one I don't worry about, though.
Right. Yeah. Just be aware that sometimes the one that's the strongest that you think and the one that is the most independent, there's going to come a time in her life when there's going to be a reality check on that, and just make sure that she knows you're there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Make sure she knows that, if she's ever having that moment, you know what I mean? When she's kind of like, man, what did I do? Or, you know what I mean? Should I have done this? Or, you never know. It could just be a heartbreak. It could be something that's going to test her independence, because when your independence gets tested, sometimes if you don't have a strong faith or you don't have a strong whatever, you're going to go into dark holes, because I went into a lot of dark holes in my journey. I call it my scenic tour to faith. I had a very scenic journey. It was very scenic, and that's going to be the title of the book, one of the books that I'm going to write. So I'm working on a book right now, called Be Not Afraid.
Be Not Afraid.
Yeah. So, Deacon's going to be part of it. Deacon Harold's going to be part of it, and a bunch of others have already agreed to be a part of it.
That's awesome.
Dr.
Peter, like a sort of anthology sort of thing.
Yeah, it's going to be really good.
Who are you after, though? I mean, after that, your friend, did they commit suicide, or did they just shoot the computer?
No, they came back online, still a little out of control, but not dead. And I called the police and that was a big struggle, because I was like, what am I doing? And it was a little messy. Ultimately they did not. And then they did get help. And now they are living a pretty good life, actually starting to seek a relationship with God a little bit. Yeah. So it, God does what God does, and it was a miracle, but it was that complete surrender, because it was only then, it was literally not until that moment that I realized that I had nothing.
Yeah.
But nothing.
Yeah. Who are you after that, though? Like, how did that fundamentally just change everything in your life?
Everything. It made me available to God. It made me available to God. For the first time in my life, I was actually willing to admit that I wasn't in control of anything. That, I could decide if I want to brush my teeth or not, but ultimately in the large things in life, it was not my will that was the most important thing. And that's a big thing. And it took literally, that was 2018. Yeah, I was 50 years old. A lot happened when I was 50. 50 was a very busy year for God with me. But I mean, it was September. Wow, it's almost been 5 years, right? Yeah, September of 17.
Yeah.
Labor Day weekend is when I became brutally aware that things were going to change, and that God was like, okay. And then on Pentecost Sunday, 2018, after this event, Pentecost Sunday, it was May 20th, 2018, was when my entire life changed. Like every part of my life changed on that day. I did like 180 degrees and was all in for whatever it was God wanted me to do.
Does something happen, or was it just, okay, what happened?
I woke up that morning and decided to go to a church that I'd never been to because the Lord told me I had to go there. And it was like 40 minutes away. And it was called Annunciation. And I just literally went to this church not knowing why I was going. Like it was.
This is in North Carolina.
Yep.
Okay.
It's Annunciation Church. And I knew I had to go. I had no idea because like I told you, when I surrendered my will in April, because that event happened in April, I'd been having a lot of really interesting things. And I'd started going to mass every day, first on TV. And then God was like, no, you really got to go to the church. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I'd never been to mass every day in my life. And I try to go every day, but I was like, what? Even now, it's probably five to 6 days a week I get to mass. But I'd never even, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I didn't even know you could go to mass every day. I didn't even know churches were open. I was like, I have to go to church? It's not just on TV. And anyway, so I was like, okay. So I started going to mass. And I still didn't know how to say the rosary. Still didn't have any prayers. Still, other than the Our Father and the Hail Mary, that's as good as it got. So like, here I am just like wandering through going, okay, Lord, what's going on here? And so I had that basic surrender of self-will in April of 18. Yeah. And then things continue to happen. And my conversion, basically, it was a massive conversion between September 17 and May of 18. And I went to the church and I sat down. I'm in the church and I look up and there's this large African-American man. Yeah. It's at this church. And I'm like, and you can't miss Deacon Harold. I'm sorry. You just can't miss Deacon Harold. Yeah. He is just a powerful, beautiful, holy man who just lives the faith. But I didn't have any idea who this man was. And, I'm in Eastern North Carolina. And so he gets up and he does this homily. He did the reading and then the priest let him do the homily. And I had never in my life ever heard a homily like that in my whole life. Like it was, they always say the fire and brimstone type thing. He talked about the devil. He talked about hell. He actually had people like, how he yells sometimes, like literally people were like jumping in the pews. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, what the heck is this? Yeah. And so after mass, then we had then of course we did the consecration and I received the Holy Sacrament and I go sit down in the pew and I'm like, all of a sudden just everything changed. And I was like, what is that? And the way I describe it, because I don't really, there's no real words for it. It was like the Holy Spirit just descended and just landed on me. And I was like given this grace and was cognitively aware that everything had changed in my life, that God was completely present. The Holy Spirit like just sat on me, gave me a grace that I don't talk about a whole lot because of, my spiritual director says it's prudent not to share like everything when the Holy Spirit does things. And I can remember right after that running, like I looked at the person I was with. I'm like, I gotta go. And I like running to the sacristy to talk to Deacon Harold. And I can remember getting right up to him and going, I have a call, but I don't know what that means. And then I was like, and I just started talking. And I to this day, I can't tell you everything that I said to him. I know I told him my name. I know he asked me my name a few times. And then I looked at him, I said, how do I get a copy of that homily? I said, I have to have a copy of it. And he literally reached in his pocket and handed it to me. And I was like, I've never heard anything like that in my life. And like, I was just on fire. Like the Holy Spirit, he thought if you ever listen for one of the first episodes of the Prodigal Life, you'll hear it. And he thought I was crazy. He was like, he thought I was certifiable. He was like, and then he said he finally realized that it was the Holy Spirit. Like he knew immediately. He was like, holy crap, she is like lit up. And I was just totally overwhelmed with this presence that was like completely with me, stayed with me, remained with me, as he is always with all of this if you invite him in. But he was present with me like in a tangible way that I didn't really know how to explain. And I just like, from that day forward, I just knew everything was going to change. Of course, being the sinner that I am, I'm still in a very inappropriate relationship. True. A priest had told me it was okay though. So that was complicated.
What?
Yes. I went to confession. I was going to confession again too. I hadn't been to confession in 13 years. For 14 years, 13 years, whatever it was. And I started going to confession again. And then there were more things that were being revealed. And I had to keep going to confession because I had so much baggage, like a lot of baggage. Like I always kind of jokingly say that Mary Magdalene and St. Paul and I were running neck and neck.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like really bad and horrible sinner. Unrepentant sinner, all of those things. And so why God chose me that day in the church, it was kind of like being blinded, you know what I mean? But but not being blind, but like literally, it was just like God sat on top of me. It was almost like if you could draw a bubble, like a picture, it would be like me. And then there'd be this bubble around me that was the Holy Spirit. And I was like walking in a bubble.
Yeah.
That's what I used to call it. Like when I went on pilgrimage with Deacon Harold that November, I jokingly would say, it's cool, we're in the bubble. You know what I mean? Like that's just how it feels because I was tangibly aware of the presence of the Holy Spirit. Now that I've gone longer in my journey, I still am tangibly aware of it, but it's in a different way. And it's just what God had to do. He had to get my attention the only way he knew I could get my attention because I was always a very, I guess I would use the word mystical. You know what I mean? I had a lot of experience as a child that were very unusual. And I fell off like a 75 or 80 foot cliff when I was, 14 years old and I walked home.
Yeah. Wow.
My brother watched it. So and he still can't talk about it. He has no idea how to explain what happened. I had 3 claw marks on my leg. Of course, I had denied confirmation before that happened. So it's like the devil was gunning for me, for lack of a better. That's how I feel now. Then I had no idea. I just thought I don't really know what happened. That was the weird thing. Like these things would happen in my life, but it never would cause me to run to God.
Right.
Like I just would God was just like a picture on the wall. He was a statue on the shelf. He wasn't I didn't have a relationship with him. I never sought one. I didn't know I needed one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And of course in the 70s, everybody's going to heaven, right?
Yeah.
So when I heard Deacon Harold talk about hell, I was like, what the heck is this? You know what I mean? Because I never heard him talk about that. What is this
place? What is this place you speak of, Deacon Harold?
Right. So that was just crazy. I was like, holy crap, it's like a real place. Like you're going to go there? Because the devil in the 70s in the Catholic Church was just kind of like somebody who dressed up for Halloween. Nobody was telling you we're going to hell. I can promise you that.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal. And we're speaking with our guest today is Miss Ellen Holmes Steeves-LeBlanc. You can find her online if you just type in her name. I have some links down in the description box if you're watching online on one of our streams, or if you're listening to on the audio version, just drop into the description box, or like I said, just type in Ellen Holmes Steeves-LeBlanc and you can find her. But she has a phenomenal podcast she does with Deacon Harold and Nick Delatorre. It's called The Prodigal Life. You can find it on the YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. So make sure you tune into that. And we're speaking with her today on the David L. Gray Show, just about just those. What was it in your life that just fundamentally just changed everything in your life? Like we've been speaking about with some of our friends that have been on the show. So yeah, this is just a really amazing story, especially the part that I'm hearing about you just being protected early on in your life, right?
Very
And
much
then it
so.
finally
Yeah.
comes to this point where you're 50 years old. And then you can from there on back, you just kind of look back from there and just see everything that had transpired in your life had prepared you for this moment, this season that you're in now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The weird thing about it is I'm really a big kid. I
Mm,
mean that. Like, there's a difference between being childish or childlike. You know what I mean? There's a big difference. And I've always been childlike. Anyone who knows me will tell me that, like, I'm just a big kid. And I honestly believe that somehow, some way, the Lord just protected my heart and protected what needed to be protected because of all the bad decisions I made in my life. No, I mean I made some good decisions too. God bless me. But please, God bless me. You know what I mean? But I overall, I lived years just breaking the commandments. I mean, that's just the honest truth. Like, not even really understanding them, because that's another thing that wasn't really important in the 70s. And then in the 80s, I think they took them out of the school. So, you know what I mean? So, like,
yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? So if
good.
it isn't being taught, and if it isn't being taught, I did have Catholic education. I had the Sisters of Charity. Yep, I did in Connecticut.
Yeah,
And they had rulers.
yeah,
The
yeah.
other thing that they didn't like a whole lot in the late 70s and early 80s was children asking questions.
Oh,
Yeah.
huh.
And I always, I was a Montessori kid. So I was raised to ask questions and to
Yeah,
critically think and to ask a lot of questions and make sure that you can get to the 6th, 7th, and 8th question. You can't
yeah,
just get stuck on the first one or two because you're not going to learn anything.
yeah.
And so I would ask questions that either the nuns didn't want to answer or the priest didn't want to answer. And, I got in a lot of trouble when I was 12 because we always had confession and they'd have the priest and we go into the church and we got mass and then they do confession afterwards. Like I asked a very honest question when I was 12 years old is why, you know what I mean? Do I as a mortal have to tell another mortal what my sins are when only God knows if I'm telling the truth?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Do you know when I got that answer? I was 50.
This is such a tragedy in some ways, but it's also beautiful. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, they sent me to the principal's office. They called my mother,
Yeah,
because see, I think, that's the weird dichotomy of this is I would ask questions and get in trouble or whatever. But on the backside of it, I also knew that I was just supposed to accept that's what it was.
mm-hmm.
But I didn't, but I think the last time I went to confession, and I had one priest when I finally went to confession after oh Lord, God bless, 13 years. I had a very hard confession. It was a really, really hard confession. And I don't know that I was scared, but I was really, I guess in a way I was scared, because I was going to tell this brand new priest, God bless him, brand new, like 6 months brand new. And Father Michael. And I had to do this really hard confession with him. He still remembers it. He'll never forget it. I promise you. He will never forget this confession as long as he lives.
I bet you a lot of priests have 1 to 2 confessions like that. I bet you they do.
Yeah. Because I actually saw him like 2 years later. I went up just to visit him at his because he got assigned to another church. And I stayed after mass and I went up to him and I was like, you know, Father, you did my very hardest confession I've ever done in my life. And he looked at me and goes, yes, I know.
Oh, so you were face to face.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were face to face. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, I know traditionally you should go behind the screen, and sometimes I do. But sometimes I think it's okay to sit and look Jesus in the eyes and tell him you're sorry. Mm-hmm. Because see, when he says, I absolve you, it ain't him.
Right.
It's Jesus. Right. And I love the idea of being able to look in that priest's eyes and see our Lord looking back at me, forgiving me.
You like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also see the beauty of being behind the screen, because sometimes it's good because it's not all about you. Yes, it's about you asking for forgiveness, but it ain't all about you.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware. It's that humility thing. You know what I mean? You've got to be sometimes you need to be in the dark so that you can get to the light.
Yeah.
So, so I see the beauty in both of them. I don't think you should abuse either one of them though. And, right. I was just at a conference at Steubenville. I went to the Defending the Faith conference up there at Franciscan University. It was last weekend.
Yeah.
And there was a beautiful speaker, and he was a priest. He's a Haitian priest that did the homily. I should share it with you. Wow, it was powerful.
Yeah, I think I know him too. I forget his name, but
Father Lewis.
Yeah. Yep. I spoke to him before. Yep.
And he was like, he asked this really odd, because he only had communion once a year. He lived up in the mountains, and they only got it once a year.
Wow.
And he said out loud, and I don't know if he really meant to say it out loud, but he said out loud, and he said, I wonder if the reason you all don't believe that it's the real presence is because you take it for granted, because you get it, because it's so available to you.
I mean, there's some truth in that.
Yeah.
I mean, you do take for granted what was most available to you.
Yeah. And it was, he used to get it once a year. He beautiful, beautiful priest. Unfortunately, there was some clapping during Mass. I'm not a big fan. No clapping. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not in the clapping. I'm very traditional. I veil. Mm-hmm. I veil when I go to Mass, no matter what Mass I'm going to. Yeah.
Do you have a preference of liturgies, or?
Oh, if I had the option to go to the Latin Mass every day of my life for the rest of my life, I would be there.
You would, yeah. Oh, why is that? What did you find there?
I never knew about it. Do you realize?
I know you didn't know about it. I had
no idea it existed. I had no clue. I didn't know there was any other form other than the North Soto. I had no idea. And so, when I found out there was this Mass that had been said for 1,500 years, I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, it's all in Latin and this. And I'm like, how do I see that? And so once a month, good old Eastern North Carolina, once a month in Wilmington at the Basilica, they have it at 5:00.
Oh, wow.
So I drove down, happy little self, about a year and a half ago. This is how long I've only known about the Latin Mass, for less than 2 years. And I drove my little self down to St. Mary's, the Basilica down there. And I went in and I'm sitting there. I have no idea what's going on. They hand me this little red book. I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting.
Oh, yeah. That's
they hand me a little red book. And I sit down.
They to hand you the red book when you come in.
Yeah. And I'm in the back, middle back. Because I don't know what's going on. And of course I'm wearing pants, because I don't know that you're not supposed to do that. I'm the only one. And there are a couple of people that roamed in after, because people are curious. And I'm just, it's very quiet, because there's this priest, the one priest, they don't use a microphone. It's not about you. This is about, the priest is operating for you. And so then I just opened the book, because it was quiet. I just started reading these prayers.
Okay.
And I was like, how do I not know about this?
Yeah.
How have I never heard these in my whole life?
Yeah.
How do we not pray these prayers every day?
That's pretty phenomenal, because it sounds like you got it. Some people would go to traditional Latin Mass and they would or even they would go to anything outside of Novus Ordo. They would go to Ambrosian. They might go to the Melkite, Divine Liturgy, and they would instantly, it would be the sensory things. It'd be the bells, the smells, the mystique. It's beautiful. They would fall for the ritual, but that's not really where it's there. That's
prayers.
awesome, but it's the prayers.
Holy crap.
It's the
So like it
prayers.
was quiet. I couldn't hear the priest. So like they have a YouTube page, Facebook page for the traditional Latin Mass for Camp Lejeune because I'm near a military installation. And then Wilmington has a Latin Mass Facebook page as well. You can look at it, and see the beautiful pictures from the beautiful basilica with like herringbone brick. It's gorgeous. I didn't even know it was there. That's a funny story. I learned it was there in 2019. That's another story for another day. Anyway, so like I couldn't hear anything. So like I post on the Facebook page, I really wish that, I could hear the priest or, hear what was going on. And they were like, that's not, you know what I mean? That's not the way it works. And I was like, whoa. So then finally somebody explained it to me, like all about it. But, if you just get the red book, sit down in the church, if you've never been to a Latin Mass before and you have no idea what you're doing, and because it took me like 4 times to even get a clue as to what was going on. And I knew I wanted to be there because like when he held the Eucharist up and like they were lifting up and I was like, what? I was like the reverence and the bells and the incense. I mean, yeah, it is overwhelming and powerful. But like when it first starts, there's babies crying and you have no idea what's going on and nobody's talking and I don't speak Latin. I did teach myself the Hail Mary in Latin, so that's good. And I've almost got the Our Father down and I'm learning, you know what I mean? I keep teaching myself. But if you just go to the Mass with the red book and they'll give you one and just sit down and read that, you will know 100% why you're there. Like there's those prayers, man, are powerful. Yeah. Like the words that he's speaking to Christ for you. Yeah. And for himself, but for you. Like he is truly an intercessor. Yeah. He is truly, and I'm not saying that the priests that are, doing this and handing out wafers like they're, candy at Halloween aren't, you know what I mean? I don't know. My priest, thank God, my confessor, who's also the priest of the church I go to, Infinite Prague down in Jacksonville, Father Bornas, he does a 10:30 Norvis Odo, but he does it ad orderem. They do patents, they've got gloves, they've got incense, and it is a beautiful Mass, half in Latin, half in English. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And, and if you got to have that Mass, and I'm never, ever going to speak the words, it's a little legitimate, because although I understand its roots, and I know that what the intention was is bad, I believe that my God is greater, and he can make good out of anything. Oh, yeah. So, like, I'm never going to dismiss it. I will speak up when something, like if something is not said properly, I'll be like, whoa, wait a minute. Because they got to follow, you got to do what it says. You can't make it your own. It's not about you, Father. Exactly. So, but if I could, I would go to the Latin Mass, but the closest Latin Mass to me is almost 2 hours away. Yeah. There is an SSPX about an hour from me. Okay. I guess we're legally, allowed to go there if there is no other option for Mass and confession. Right. There's such a division in our faith right now. Yeah. And there's so much judgment and there's so much I don't understand. Like David, what is the devil known for? Yeah, division. What's his gig? Yeah. Division. Yeah. So by all of the Catholics in the world fighting amongst themselves, he's having a freaking party. And we're providing the equipment for him to do it. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm not, and I'm not saying we should be calling out things that are wrong. I mean, all this pro whatever stuff Jesus is pretty clear, and God, I'm pretty sure there's no, it's not just on Sundays. You know what I mean? Like you got to follow the commandments, and it's flipping hard to be a Catholic. Yeah. It's hard to be a Christian, but it's really hard to be a Catholic. Yeah. You've got to want it, and I didn't know what I knew some of the 10 commandments, but I didn't really know what they meant. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then the other side of it is, did I care? When I was but coming out on the other side, 5 years ago, Yeah.
and then seeing how culture was there like a shift for you culturally? I mean, because there was for me becoming Catholic. Like before I was, before that transition, before that conversion. I mean, I was probably like a diehard liberal, and I didn't think anything was wrong with anybody doing anything. And the
Right.
transition for me was like, but the Catholic Church I found to be like reasonable and true when it came to things like life. Like, life begins at moment of conception.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the consequences from that. Like, did you have to leave a lot of things that you had just accepted in the world behind?
Oh, yeah.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm very honest in my journey. I mean, October 1st, I'll be sober 14 years.
Oh wow.
So, yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah. So, and that's only by the grace of God. I, I, I got sober because God, that's the first time I ever heard the voice of God, was the day before I got sober. He was audible in my car.
Audible.
Audible, like really loud.
Like, what did he
Yes.
say?
He said, "You're an alcoholic. Go get help."
I
And I was
mean,
like,
nothing like deeply profound or anything like that.
no.
Just the truth. Just the
Well,
truth.
I cried out. I'm driving down the road. I'm crying hysterically. This is September 30th, 29th, 30th. Hang on. September 30th, 2008. My life was totally out of control. It was just, I was a train wreck, you know what I mean, on steroids. And I'm driving down the road. I wasn't drunk, I don't think, at that juncture. And I'm driving down the road and I'm crying. And I finally just literally cried out to God, "What is wrong with me?
Oh, okay.
Please help me." Like because I always knew God was there. I just never really asked for his help. Like I never went looking for him, if you know what I mean. But that day I did. And literally, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so but the weird thing about it is I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what alcoholism was. I didn't know it was a disease. I'd never heard of it. It skipped 2 generations in my family. I didn't know any, as far as I knew. I didn't have any in my immediate family. Nobody really drank in my family. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have any idea what that was. So I was on the road to go, I happened to be on the road at my doctor's office. I drove down, I just parked in my doctor's office. I was like, what is this? And, this is 2008. So, the internet was there, Facebook had just started. Anyway, and I called the one person I remembered one time saying something about like recovery.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that she'd had a hard life. You know what I mean? And I thought, well, I'll call her. And I'm sure that was God, you know what I mean, nudging me to do that. And I called her and she was like, she did exactly what every AA person's supposed to do. She said, "Where are you?" And I told her. And she said, "Stay right there. I'm driving. I'll come right to you." And she brought me the pamphlets. She sat there and she explained to me what it was. And she said, "Now it's up to you." She said, "So find a meeting." And she told me, what a meeting was and whatever. And so I went like any good alcoholic and went to a restaurant and sat down and had a beer. I only could drink half of it though, which was weird. I like half a beer. I hadn't had half a beer in I don't even know how many years. And I was like, and I couldn't finish it. And I was like, this is really weird.
So you physically couldn't finish it?
No.
Yeah.
I couldn't finish it. So that would have been, that was the 30th. So I woke up the morning and I didn't drink that night. Really weird. And I was like, I woke up the next day and I did my day. I felt like crap because that's what the DTs will do to you when you're drinking a lot and you don't drink anymore and you quit cold turkey. But I didn't know I'd quit. I just didn't want to drink anymore.
Yeah.
Like at all. Like when God did that, whatever the obsession was removed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what he
I have
does.
not had a drink or a desire since that day, September 30th, 2008.
Yeah.
And
God is always what you call a cold turkey God, right? Rarely does things in moderation, right? It's just
See, you don't play. Like
no.
if you really cry out and he knows you're sincere and you really want help, he's going to help you. And I know those people are going to say, "Well, I really meant it and he didn't help me," or whatever. that may or may not be true. You
Mm.
just might not know the answer yet.
Mm.
Like sometimes the answer is not now.
Mm.
Sometimes the answer is no. And I can't tell you how many no's I received in my life that I'm really grateful for now. Because, that's who we are. We're on this journey. But, see, the hardest thing for me in my journey, David, I didn't know God likes sinners.
You thought, I mean, what'd you think? What'd you think?
You had to be perfect.
Okay.
He didn't want nothing to do with me. Why would he want something to do with me?
Okay.
I mean, and because that's what the devil tells you.
Okay.
You should be ashamed of your behavior, right? He's not going to forgive you. How can he forgive you? You're going to hell anyway, because that's what, although you never heard that from a priest and somebody in church, you would hear it from other people all the time. You know what I mean? Because you've done this or done that, or God forbid all the horrible things that we've done in our lives. So why would you think that God liked you when you didn't even really like yourself? Because like God is love. So if you don't love yourself, how are you going to let God love you?
Yeah. I never thought about that. I don't know if you guys talked about this on the podcast. Obviously, God is love. I mean, it's his very essence, can be anything but. He loves us. But does God like us?
Yeah, he does. You know why I know he likes us? Because he could have come to earth in any way, shape, or form he wanted to. He could have done anything to remove original sin. Correct? He's God. He's out of time. He's out of space and time. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
What did he decide? I want to be a human being.
Yeah.
If you want to be a human being, you got to like it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great answer. So, I mean, that's a good answer. Like, I mean, the proof that God not only loves us, but he likes us because he came in our likeliness, right?
Correct.
That's pretty phenomenal. Yeah.
I mean, it's the only way you can think about it because, he loved us so much that, I mean, that's like my favorite thing. And they don't say it out loud on the altar very often, that he humbled himself to share in our humanity. Wow. That every time I hear a priest, he leaves the mic on, he forgets to turn it off, and you can hear him say it really, really quietly. I get tears because you're like, yeah, he's in his divinity, of course. And we all know that because that's how we think of God. He's divine.
Right.
But most people don't think about God, that he was like a walking, talking, breathing man. Yeah. The only difference between Jesus and you is he didn't sin.
That's it. That's it. I remember one time when I was in grad school, I think I shocked. I didn't know at the time the people in my classroom at the time. So I'm just in there talking, me. And I'm saying, Jesus he had a penis. He went to the bathroom. He did all this stuff. And lady said, lady says to me, how do you know he had a penis? And it's one of those things that you hear and then you realize, like, where am I at right now? That people like disconnect the baptism with Jesus not having like the organs of a man. Like where am I at? And it still shocks me to this day.
I mean, and a lot of Catholics and Christians too, they do not like the idea that he was crucified naked.
Right. And
that's,
the common image is like the one behind me. He has the hanky around his waist.
Well, we do that to respect his dignity, which, his divinity, which is what we should do. I never really understood it either until I thought about it one day. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what any mother would do for her child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always look at it like, Mary, when they laid him in the tomb, I can just see her covering him.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? And that's how he should be because
I think it's like the opposite of what I mean. It's of course I think it goes without saying, but it would have been the opposite of what happened to Lot, right, and his children. Yeah. So and I think that's the beautiful thing. Yeah.
So I had no idea that God really likes sinners. They're his favorite people to try and bring to the light. So like when all that started happening my first experience I ever had in my life, I was 7. But, and that one you could ask anybody, they'll tell you, Jesus woke me up. He came in my bedroom and woke me up when I was 7 years old. And I would tell anybody that when I was a child. It was common knowledge with family and friends. And it was never a I'm not saying it wasn't a big deal, but it wasn't, they would just be like, okay. And I would say, yeah, he came in my room and he hung out with me for a little while. I was like 7 years old. I lived in California. I just was in California a year ago or whatever. And I actually went back to the house so that I could see the room, the house where he came, where he appeared.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't afraid. I can remember I just rolled over. I know exactly. It's as clear as it was then today as it was then. And I know it was just beautiful. It was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And, you would think, gee, I'm sure the people that are listening, they're like, oh my gosh, she had this amazing experience. Didn't she like run to Jesus like Bernadette? Or
like become a nun.
No, that wouldn't be me. I would be like, that was really nice. I'm going to go do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So, which, it's sad in a way, but I also know that when I told you that I always knew that I had some type of a protection or always felt like I told you, I always believed. Yeah. I didn't believe it in my heart per se, or whatever that connection is or whatever, but I always knew Jesus was real. Like I'd seen him. I was like, yeah, he's the real deal. Okay. Yeah. And, and I just never worried about that at all. I didn't have any real relationship with the Virgin Mary at all. I didn't know my rosary and I didn't really like her. I loved her because you're supposed to love the Virgin Mary, right? But my mother, I was very independent. I love my mother. I do love my mother. We had a very interesting relationship, my whole life because I was such a rebel, you know what I mean? And I take credit for a lot of the strife that we went through, which started when I was very young. But the Virgin Mary, I guess I always kind of saw her like my mother in a way, because I would just transpose that. And so I was like, well, I don't really need my mom. So why do I really, I didn't really think I needed a relationship with her at all. So I chose not to have one. And I really honestly did not have one. And I've done 3 consecrations to her and I learned to say the rosary in November of 2018 on the back of a bus in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land. That's where I learned to say the rosary, on the back of the bus.
Wow.
Sitting on the back of the bus. They did the rosary every day on the bus. Mm-hmm. And I was with a dear friend of mine who lives in Australia. His name is Charbel. Yes, he's named after Saint Charbel. And he knew how to do the rosary because he is a Maronite. He's a devout Catholic. Okay. And so he kind of had his rosary and I had mine, and we sat right near each other, and I learned to say the rosary one prayer at a time. And it took, and even after we got back, I still had to learn, there was still more to learn, but that's where I learned. And now the funny thing about it though is, growing up and as an adult, I would always joke around and say, because I never let my kids ride the school bus, very little. I mean, I think the total time my children were ever on a school bus was maybe 6 months, ever. Mm-hmm. Because I knew that nothing good ever happened on a school bus. And I knew for sure nothing good ever happened on the back of the school bus. So what's hilarious?
I don't know. The back of the school bus sure made a man out of me. It taught me to stand up for myself.
Oh, the stuff that went on the back of the school bus in Connecticut? No, it wasn't. It didn't have anything to do that was good. I can tell you that. And so I used to say that. So I thought it was funny that that's where the Lord taught me to say the rosary.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
It's hilarious. I mean, it's just, God has a really good sense of humor if you can just look past your own crap, you know what I mean, to see it.
Yeah, that's a great way to wrap it up. And there's so much more to cover, but I promise to keep it.
We'll come back.
But what a phenomenal journey. I mean, I really can't even call you a reverts, because you've always been Catholic, never walked away, but you had an experience that just changed everything, and you've just been growing deeper and deeper and deeper in your faith for the past 5 years.
Yep.
And man, it's so good to meet you. I never knew we had so much in common, so much in your life. Like I'd be like, oh yeah, I had that experience. That's phenomenal. But as we wrap up, tell people where they can find out more about you and listen to your podcast.
Yep, go to theprodigallife.com, or you can go to Spotify, Apple, the Awaken app. The Awaken app is a wonderful app if you're not aware of it. It's full of podcasts and prayers in Latin, English, and Spanish. There's music on there. There's a chat room. It's a really good app. But theprodigallife.com. You can also find me at Select International Tours, and just put that into your engine. That you can also find Deacon Harold there and a bunch of other wonderful leaders that take people on pilgrimage. As soon as my website is up, which hopefully will be in the next 30 days, you'll be able to go to Destined for Truth. I do have a Substack account, which you can find. It's Holmes Steeves-LeBlanc. Just like it says there, I do have a Substack, and which eventually will revert into my website. And then I am just beginning speaking engagements. So that is a new thing. You'll be able to actually hire me if you ever wanted me to come talk at your parish or your mission or anything like that and share my story. There's a lot of stuff. And like David and I have just scratched the surface, but hopefully I'll get to come back on and share more with you. God bless you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you. God bless you, David.
I'd like to ask you to hop over to davidlgray.info, become a sponsor there if you like, join my mailing list if you like, and visit the Gray Report while you're there for the latest news from a rigid Catholic lean.